What if the key to outsmarting every challenge in your life isn't about pushing harder, running faster, or fighting louder, but about thinking differently? What if the smartest move is the moment you stop moving? Because strategy doesn't begin when you act. It begins in the quiet pause before you act, in the small, almost invisible moment when your mind steps back, your breath slows down, and you see the situation with a clarity most people never reach. Most people live life like a sprint, rushing, reacting, colliding with problems they never saw coming. But strategic thinkers move through life like a grandmaster on a chessboard, calm, quiet, observant, always seeing something others miss. They don't panic when the unexpected appears. They don't drown in noise or urgency. They don't let emotion drag them into decisions they'll regret. Instead, they pause. They breathe. They see the whole board, not just the next square. And because of that, they win quietly, consistently, and decisively. This is not a special talent. This is not something reserved for CEOs, military leaders, or geniuses. This is a skill you can learn, a mindset you can build, a superpower already inside you waiting to be awakened. And in the next few minutes, you'll learn how to think long-term while everyone else rushes, how to see patterns hidden in plain sight, how to anticipate challenges before they arrive, how to position yourself so life bends in your favor. Instead of pushing against you, imagine waking up each day with a sense of control. Imagine making decisions with calm authority. Imagine moving through uncertainty with confidence instead of fear. That is what strategic thinking gives you. Not luck, not force, but clarity. So take a slow breath, let your mind settle, and step into this journey with me. Because once you learn to think strategically, you stop surviving life, and you start shaping it. Let's begin. There is a moment in every person's life when everything quietly begins to change. Not when they get older, not when they get richer, not when they achieve something impressive, but when they stop reacting and start thinking strategically. For most people, life feels like a constant tug of war, reacting to stress, reacting to problems, reacting to people, reacting to expectations. Everything is urgent. Everything is loud. Everything demands an immediate response. And in that rush, people lose their power. Not because they're weak, but because reaction steals clarity. Reaction is fast, emotional, impulsive. Strategy is slow, intentional, deliberate. And the turning point, the shift that separates the reactive life from the strategic life, is one simple skill: the pause. The pause is not passive. The pause is not hesitation. The pause is not fear. The pause is control. The pause is clarity. The pause is the birth of strategy. Imagine this: someone criticizes you. Your chest tightens. Your mind fires up a defense. Your ego prepares to fight. That's the reaction. But then, before the words escape your mouth, you pause. Just a breath. Just a moment. Just enough space for awareness to slip in. In that second, you see the situation differently. Maybe they were projecting. Maybe you misheard the tone. Maybe the real issue is something deeper. Maybe this isn't worth losing your peace over. Maybe silence would serve you better than speaking. That single pause becomes a filter. It removes impulse and replaces it with intelligence. A pause doesn't delay your power. It sharpens it. The difference between a reactive person and a strategic person isn't education, skill, or talent. It is the ability to insert space between stimulus and response. Reactive people are pulled by emotion. Strategic people are guided by awareness. Reactive people act from fear, ego, or insecurity. Strategic people act from clarity, patience, and purpose. Reactive people fight battles they didn't choose. Strategic people pick their battles like a chess master. The pause is the doorway between these two lives. Let's go deeper into the psychology behind this shift. Your mind is naturally wired for survival, not wisdom. When something happens, your brain wants to protect you even when you're not in danger. That's why you snap. That's why you rush. That's why you interrupt. That's why you overthink. That's why you react emotionally even when you don't want to. Your mind is doing its job, keep you safe. But safety is not strategy. Survival is not success. And protection is not clarity. To think strategically, you must override your automatic reactions, not by force, but by awareness. You pause, you breathe, you observe. You ask, what is actually happening here? Not how do I feel, not what do I want to say, but what is the smartest move forward? This is the foundation of strategic thinking. The ability to respond with intention instead of reacting out of emotion. The pause becomes even more powerful when life gets messy. In moments of stress, in moments of uncertainty, in moments of conflict, in moments where you feel misunderstood, in moments where fear pushes you to act quickly. These are the moments where strategy is born. The pause gives you time to see the whole board, the whole pattern, the whole dynamic. It prevents you from becoming the kind of person who ruins opportunities by acting too fast or destroys relationships by speaking without clarity. A reactive person moves like fire, unpredictable and destructive. A strategic person moves like water, calm, adaptable, and unstoppable. And all it takes is a single moment of stillness. Let's imagine two versions of you. Version 1 reacts. Someone disrespects you, you snap back. A problem appears, you panic. Plans change, you complain. Someone disagrees, you defend. Life feels heavy, chaotic, exhausting. Version 2 pauses. Someone disrespects you, you analyze the intention. A problem appears, you evaluate the options. Plans change, you adjust your approach. Someone disagrees, you listen and decide whether it matters. Life feels precise, intentional, strategic. The difference between these two versions isn't intelligence, it's awareness. It's control. It's the pause. The pause is not empty. The pause is full of perspective, insight, clarity. Inside the pause, you regain your center. You re-enter the moment consciously. You reclaim the power that reaction tries to steal from you. Life is not shaped by the big decisions. Life is shaped by the micro moments, the moments where you choose whether you act from emotion or from strategy. A single pause can change the direction of a conversation, the tone of a relationship, the outcome of a conflict, the future of an opportunity. A pause can save your peace, save your reputation, save your clarity, save your future. A pause is not weakness. A pause is wisdom. And it is the first step toward living life like a strategist instead of a reactor. Here is the truth of this chapter. You cannot be strategic if you cannot pause. And you cannot pause if you are controlled by emotion. Strategy begins with stillness. The moment you choose awareness over impulse, you shift from chaos to clarity, from reaction to intention, from survival to mastery. This is the foundational shift, the shift that sets the tone for the rest of your life. Because the pause is not small, the pause is transformation. There is one advantage that separates powerful thinkers from average ones. It's not intelligence. It's not experience. It's not talent. It is clarity. Clarity is the ability to see what actually matters when everyone else is blinded by noise. It's the difference between wandering and moving with purpose, between reacting emotionally and choosing intelligently, between living accidentally and living strategically. Without clarity, problems look bigger than they are. Opportunities look smaller than they are. People feel more intimidating than they are. Life feels more chaotic than it truly is. With clarity, everything sharpens, everything simplifies, everything aligns. Clarity isn't something you wait for. Clarity is something you create. And you create it through one foundational skill, asking better questions. Most people try to solve problems without understanding them. They rush into action. They jump to conclusions. They chase the first idea that appears. But strategic thinkers don't start with action. They start with definition. They don't ask, "What should I do?" They ask, "What is actually happening here?" This single shift changes everything. The wrong question leads to the wrong answer. The right question unlocks the truth. Clarity comes from asking questions that cut through confusion and reveal the core. Questions like, what exactly is the outcome I want? What part of this situation is within my control? What matters right now? And what can wait? What is the real problem beneath the surface problem? If I zoom out 1 year, does this still matter? What's the smartest move? Not the fastest move. These questions sharpen the mind. They turn emotion into insight, complexity into simplicity, chaos into direction. Here's the hidden truth. Confusion is not a lack of intelligence. Confusion is the absence of definition. You're not stressed because your life is complicated. You're stressed because your mind is crowded. Clarity declutters the mind. It removes assumptions. It removes emotional fog. It removes the mental noise that keeps you stuck. Most people walk around with blurry goals, blurry fears, blurry priorities. No wonder they feel overwhelmed. You can't hit a target. You can't see. Clarity is the act of defining the target sharply, cleanly, precisely. What do I actually want here? Not what people expect from me. Not what my fears suggest. Not what my impulses demand. But what I want clearly. When you define the outcome, every decision becomes easier. Because direction eliminates distraction. Clarity is also the ability to distinguish signal from noise. Life is full of noise opinions, emotions, impulses, old beliefs, distractions, doubts. If you're not careful, your mind becomes a battlefield. People argue with symptoms and ignore causes. They react to surface problems and miss the deeper patterns. They solve temporary issues and overlook the long-term consequences. Strategic thinkers operate differently. They ask, what is signal here? What is noise? Noise is temporary. Noise is emotional. Noise is dramatic. Noise is loud. Signal is consistent. Signal is quiet. Signal is direction. Signal is truth. Clarity is choosing signal over noise. Another layer of clarity is understanding the future before it arrives. No one can predict the future perfectly. But strategic thinkers learn to project it not with magic, but with logic. They ask, if I keep doing what I'm doing, where will this lead? If I say yes to this, What does my life look like in 6 months? What are the second-order consequences of this decision? What trend is emerging beneath this moment? What pattern is repeating itself? This habit of foresight turns life into a chessboard, where you're not just reacting to the present, but preparing for the next move, the next shift, the next opportunity. Clarity is seeing the chain reaction before it happens. People who master clarity don't need to control the future, they simply read it better. But clarity isn't only about intellect. It's also emotional. You must learn to clarify your inner world, your fears, your needs, your motivations, your biases. Sometimes the confusion is not around you. It's within you. A person unclear internally will be unclear externally. If you don't know what you want, the world will tell you what to want. If you don't know what matters, everything will feel urgent. If you don't know your values, you'll bend under pressure. If you don't know your boundaries, you'll resent the people who cross them. Clarity begins with self-honesty. Why am I reacting this way? What fear is underneath this anger? What desire is underneath this frustration? What story am I telling myself that may not be true? What expectation is hurting me? These questions don't weaken you. They free you. Because self-awareness is the root of good judgment, and judgment is the root of strategy. Here's something most people never realize. Clarity saves time. Clarity saves energy. Clarity saves opportunities. Clarity saves relationships. Clarity saves your life from being wasted on the wrong things. A clear mind moves cleaner. A clear life feels lighter. Without clarity, you will work hard on the wrong tasks. Fight battles that don't matter. Worry about things outside your control. Listen to opinions that don't align with your goals. Follow paths that were never yours to begin with. With clarity, you will conserve energy for what matters. Make smarter, faster decisions. Protect your time without guilt. Move in sync with your long-term vision. Become unshakable under pressure. Clarity gives you back your power. And here is the essence of this chapter. Clarity is not a luxury. Clarity is survival for the strategic thinker. When your mind is sharp, your decisions become precise. Your reactions become grounded. Your direction becomes focused. Your future becomes intentional. Clarity doesn't remove challenges, it removes confusion. And once confusion is gone, everything becomes solvable. Before every great strategic move in history, there was information, not luck, not instinct, not brute force. Information. The people who win consistently, quietly, predictably, are the people who learn before they leap. They gather data, observe patterns, read the room, study the terrain, and understand the players involved. Most failures in life don't happen because people are incapable. They happen because people move faster than they learn. They act without understanding. They speak without context. They decide without analysis. They jump without preparation. Action without information is reaction. Action with information is strategy. Information is not about collecting facts endlessly. It's about collecting the right facts. It's not about knowing everything. It's about knowing what matters. Most people drown in noise. Strategic thinkers filter it. They ask 3 simple but powerful questions. What do I need to know? What do I already know? What do I think I know? But actually, don't. That last question is the sharpest knife. Assumptions ruin more decisions than ignorance. People don't fail because they lack knowledge. They fail because they rely on beliefs that were never true. never verified, never questioned. A strategist is dangerous, not because they know more, but because they verify more. Information gathering begins with observation. Before you enter a room, observe the room. Before you join a conversation, observe the dynamic. Before you make a commitment, observe the consequences. Before you judge someone, observe their patterns. Patterns reveal truth. Emotion reveals impulses, but patterns reveal reality. People tell you who they are through repetition. Companies reveal their future through trends. Relationships reveal their health through small behaviors. Life reveals opportunities through quiet signals. But you can only see these things when you stop rushing and start observing. Strategic thinkers don't just look, they notice. The tone, the timing, the body language, the inconsistencies, the shifts in energy, the mismatches between what people say and what they do. Information is everywhere. Most people simply aren't paying attention. Another pillar of information is filtering. Not all information is good information. Not all data is relevant. Not all opinions are valuable. Not all sources are trustworthy. If you want to think strategically, you must become a filter, not a sponge. A sponge absorbs everything: truth, lies, noise, drama, fear, rumors. A filter lets noise pass through and keeps only what's useful. Ask yourself, is this information factual or emotional? Is this source credible or reactive? Is this data recent or outdated? Is this relevant to my goal or just a distraction? Is this helping me think or only making me feel? This simple mental filtration system protects your clarity, your time, and your energy. Because wrong information is not harmless, it's expensive. It costs opportunities. It costs relationships. It costs years. Strategic thinkers don't just search for data. They protect themselves from contamination. The third layer of information is interpretation. Information is raw. Interpretation gives it meaning. Two people can receive the same data and arrive at completely different conclusions. The difference is perspective. A reactive person sees a problem. A strategic thinker sees a signal. A fearful person sees a threat. A strategic thinker sees a pattern. An impulsive person sees an opportunity. A strategic thinker sees a test. When you interpret information through the lens of ego or emotion, your decision becomes distorted. When you interpret information through the lens of strategy, your decisions become intelligent. Interpretation requires 3 mental habits. Zoom out. Look at the long-term patterns, not the short-term noise. Most crises disappear when you zoom out far enough. See cause and effect. Every event is part of a chain. Understand the chain, and the future becomes predictable. Identify incentives. People act based on what benefits them. To understand behavior, understand the incentive behind it. When you combine these 3 habits, life stops being confusing and starts being readable like a map. Another skill of strategic thinkers is information timing. They don't wait until the last minute to learn. They don't gather data only when a problem explodes. They gather information early, quietly, consistently, proactively. Information gathered early is leverage. Information gathered late is damage control. Think of it like weather forecasting. A storm coming tomorrow is an emergency. A storm coming in a week is a plan. Strategic thinkers build a habit of learning before danger arrives, before opportunities appear, before decisions become urgent. Proactive information gives you calm. Reactive information forces you into chaos. Information gathering also has a deeply human aspect, understanding people. People are not logical machines. They are emotional systems. If you want to think strategically, you must learn how people think, feel, react, and protect themselves. Study their fears, study their desires, study their communication style, study what they avoid, study what triggers them, study what motivates them. Information about human nature is the ultimate advantage. It helps you communicate, negotiate, influence, and resolve conflict. A person who understands people can outsmart a person who only understands facts. But here is the greatest truth. Information is power only when combined with action. Some people collect information endlessly, but never move. They research themselves into paralysis. They analyze themselves into inaction. They think so much, they forget to live. Strategy requires a balance. Learn deeply, then move decisively. Information makes your actions sharper. Action makes your information useful. Neither is complete without the other. And this brings us to the essence of this chapter. Strategic thinking begins long before movement. It begins with learning. The world rewards those who prepare, those who gather signals early, those who study reality before responding to it, those who understand the game before they play it. When you learn before you move, you don't just make better decisions, you make fewer mistakes. You save time, energy, and years of regret. You stop fighting battles you didn't need to fight. You stop chasing goals that weren't truly yours. You stop repeating patterns that once blinded you. Information is the foundation. Action is the structure. Strategy is the result. Most people make decisions the way a child looks at a puzzle. They stare at one piece and hope they understand the whole picture. Strategic thinkers do the opposite. They zoom out. They look at the entire puzzle first, then decide where each piece fits. This is the art of the wide lens, the ability to see life not as isolated moments, but as interconnected systems, to see events not as random chaos, but as patterns, to see people not just as who they are today, but who they're becoming. When your lens is narrow, everything feels urgent and personal. A problem feels like the problem. A setback feels like failure. A difficult person feels like an enemy. A delay feels like the universe blocking you. But when your lens widens, perspective changes. What felt like a crisis becomes a transition. What felt like rejection becomes redirection. What felt like stagnation becomes preparation. Zoom out far enough, and chaos becomes clarity. The wide lens begins with systems, thinking, the understanding that everything is connected. Your career decisions affect your relationships. Your mindset affects your opportunities. Your habits affect your future self. Your emotional reactions affect your long-term reputation. Nothing stands alone. Everything you do casts a shadow forward. Most people react to symptoms. Strategic thinkers diagnose systems. They don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They ask, "What is this part of what system is creating this result? What pattern does this belong to?" For example, if you constantly feel rushed, you may think the problem is time. But zoom out, it might be poor planning. Zoom out again, it might be lack of priorities. Zoom out even further, it might be a fear of saying no. The problem wasn't time. It was the system behind it. When you widen the lens, you stop treating surface problems and start solving root problems. Seeing the big picture also requires pattern recognition. Life repeats itself more than people realize. Human behavior repeats. Emotions repeat. Mistakes repeat. Opportunities repeat. Warning signs repeat. Most people are too busy reacting to notice the repetition. Strategic thinkers watch for patterns. They observe how certain people behave over time. They notice which decisions always lead to the same results. They pay attention to which environments elevate them and which drain them. They track their own emotional cycles. When you learn to recognize patterns, you gain the ability to predict outcomes, predict problems, predict people, predict timing. Prediction isn't magic. It's simply the reward of paying attention. When you see the same signals enough times, you start to understand what they mean. And this creates power. Because when you can predict, you can prepare. And when you can prepare, you no longer fear the future. The wide lens also means zooming out emotionally. Emotions shrink our perspective. Fear narrows our lens until we can only see danger. Anger narrows our lens until we can only see blame. Stress narrows our lens until we can only see urgency. But strategy lives in the space where emotion calms. When you zoom out emotionally, you regain vision. You see options instead of threats. You see solutions instead of enemies. You see consequences instead of impulses. A wise person once said, "Most decisions that ruin your life are made in the heat of the moment." Zooming out slows you down. It creates distance between stimulus and response. It allows reason to return to the conversation, and in that space, clarity appears. Another skill of the wide lens is timeline awareness. Most people think only in the short term. They want immediate results, instant validation, fast progress. But strategic thinkers look at decades, not days. They ask, what will this mean 6 months from now? What will this look like in 5 years? How will this shape my identity long term? When you stretch the timeline, decisions become obvious. Suddenly, the wrong people fade out of your life. The impulsive choices lose their power. The distractions look small. The sacrifices look worthwhile. Long-term thinking gives you a kind of calm that short-term thinking can never provide. Because when you know where you're going, you stop panicking about where you are. Seeing the big picture also requires understanding hidden forces, the invisible drivers behind visible events. People rarely say their true motives. Companies rarely reveal their real goals. Life rarely shows you the whole plan up front. But hidden forces always exist. A person's insecurity may drive their anger. A company's financial pressure may drive their decisions. Your own fear may drive your procrastination. When you widen your lens, you begin to see the forces beneath the surface. You stop reacting to symptoms and start understanding causes. This is why strategic thinkers are calm. They're not surprised by anything. They understand the forces at play. The wide lens also builds anticipation. When you see patterns, systems, timelines, and hidden motives, you begin to sense what's coming before it arrives. You can sense when a relationship is drifting. You can sense when a job opportunity is fading. You can sense when a market is shifting. You can sense when a person's words no longer match their intentions. People call this intuition. But intuition is often just pattern recognition disguised as instinct. When your lens is wide, you catch the small signals most people miss. And that allows you to prepare, adjust, pivot, or avoid unnecessary pain altogether. That is the power of foresight. It doesn't guarantee success, but it dramatically reduces regret. Ultimately, the wide lens turns you into a strategist, not a reactor. You stop getting lost in details. You stop drowning in emotion. You stop taking things personally. You stop making impulsive moves. Instead, You understand context. You see trajectory. You predict outcomes. You choose wisely. Life stops feeling random. It starts feeling navigable. When your lens widens, your world expands. Your decisions sharpen. Your future clears. Most people live their lives like they're driving in heavy fog, reacting only to what's directly in front of them. By the time they see the obstacle, it's already too late. By the time they feel the consequences, the damage is already done. But strategic thinkers live differently. They lift themselves above the fog. They anticipate, not with anxiety, not with fear, but with clarity. Anticipation is one of the most underrated forms of intelligence, the quiet ability to sense what's coming long before it arrives. It's the reason some people avoid disasters, seize opportunities, and remain unshaken in chaos. It's the difference between being tossed around by life and surfing the wave before it hits the shore. Anticipation turns you into someone who moves with intention instead of reaction. Anticipation begins with a simple mindset. Don't just look at what's happening. Look at what it's leading to. Life always gives clues before it gives consequences. A relationship doesn't fall apart overnight. A business doesn't collapse in a single moment. A person doesn't burn out in one stressful week. A dream doesn't die in one failure. There are always signs, patterns, shifts, subtle changes in tone, rhythm, motivation, energy. Most people ignore these signals because they're caught in their own urgency. Strategic thinkers pay attention. They ask themselves, if this continues, where does it lead? If I take this path, what's the next natural outcome? What is this moment hinting at? When you start asking these questions, you begin to see the invisible shape of things, the trajectory behind the moment. Anticipation also means learning to think several moves ahead. Imagine two people playing chess. One player sees only the piece in front of them. The other sees the entire board, the entire sequence, the entire chain of consequences. Who wins? It's never the one who moves fastest. It's the one who thinks furthest. Life works the same way. Every action triggers a ripple. Every habit creates momentum. Every choice carries a timeline. The strategic thinker doesn't just ask, what happens if I do this now? They ask, what happens because I did this now? They live with expanded time awareness. They think in days, months, years, decades. And because they think long, they play smart. They're not seduced by shortcuts. They're not fooled by temporary thrills. They don't chase validation or respond to pressure. They move with a quiet understanding that the biggest wins come from playing the long game. To master anticipation, you must also embrace scenario thinking. The average person clings to one single expectation. I hope things go this way. Strategic thinkers prepare for multiple paths. What if it's harder? What if it's faster? What if an opportunity opens? What if a door closes? This isn't worrying. This is positioning. When you have scenarios, you don't break when something unexpected happens. You pivot. You adjust. You recalculate. You shift direction without losing momentum. You become the kind of person who walks through chaos with calm eyes. Here's a small story, a simple one, but one that captures the essence of anticipation. There was once a man who always won at negotiation. People thought he was gifted, intimidating, even lucky. But none of those were true. His secret was simple. He never entered a conversation without imagining the 5 most likely outcomes. He played them in his mind like short movies. He predicted reactions, fears, objections, désir. So when he finally sat at the table, nothing surprised him. Where others felt pressure, he felt familiarity. Where others froze, he flowed. Where others reacted emotionally, he responded strategically. He wasn't a genius. He was prepared, and preparation is the purest form of anticipation. Another dimension of anticipation is emotional foresight, reading people the way sailors read the wind. You don't need to be psychic to know how someone might respond. You just need to observe patterns. How do they react when challenged? What motivates them? What do they avoid? What do they defend? When you understand human patterns, you can almost predict behavior. Who will break under stress? Who will surprise you with strength? Who will stay? Who will leave? Who will commit? Who will betray? Who will grow with you? Who will grow away from you? This is not judgment. It's awareness. When you anticipate human behavior, you remove unnecessary shock from your life. You stop expecting consistency from inconsistent people. You stop placing heavy responsibilities on fragile shoulders. You stop giving your heart to those who can't hold it. Anticipation becomes protection. At its deepest level, anticipation is the ability to build mental readiness. To say, if this happens, I know my move. If that happens, I won't panic. If everything shifts, I'll adapt. If nothing changes, I'll keep going. It creates confidence, not loud confidence. But quiet, certainty. The kind of confidence that comes from knowing you're prepared for multiple futures and that none of them will break you. This is how anticipation transforms your identity. You stop being someone life happens to. You become someone life happens around, yet you remain centered, intentional, unshaken. Anticipation doesn't remove uncertainty. It removes helplessness. It doesn't give you control over the future. It gives you control over your readiness for the future. And that subtle shift changes everything. Because the truth is, luck favors the prepared. Opportunity rewards the aware. And life becomes much less terrifying when you know you can think ahead, pivot quickly, and remain aligned with your long game. Timing is the silent architect behind every victory you've ever admired. The promotion that looked effortless, the relationship that unfolded naturally, the business idea that suddenly took off, the athlete who seemed to always be in the right place. None of it was luck. None of it was coincidence. It was timing, an invisible strategy, executed with quiet precision. Most people chase life. Strategic thinkers match life. They know when to push, when to pause, when to wait, and when to strike. They understand that success isn't just about effort, it's about alignment, the perfect intersection between readiness and opportunity. Timing begins with a truth most people avoid. Not everything deserves action right now. But we live in a culture that worships speed. Move fast. Do it now. Hurry before someone else gets it. And because of that pressure, people make decisions from fear instead of wisdom. They text back too quickly. They say yes too soon. They invest too early. They quit too late. They speak before thinking. They jump without looking. Then they wonder why their lives feel filled with friction. When your timing is off, everything feels heavier. When your timing is on, everything feels natural. Timing is the rhythm of life. Strategic thinkers learn to hear it. Patience is the first pillar of timing. And patience is not passive. It's not sitting still or doing nothing. It is active observation, waiting with awareness, not waiting with anxiety. Imagine an eagle perched high on a cliff. It doesn't flap around desperately searching for food. It watches, it scans, it waits for the perfect moment, the moment when one precise movement is worth more than 100 random ones. That is strategic patience. The world rushes. You watch. The world reacts. You read. The world forces. You choose. Patience becomes your power because it protects you from impulsive decisions disguised as urgency. But timing isn't only about waiting. It's also about sensing the moment to move. There are windows in life, tiny openings, where action multiplies in impact. A conversation that could change everything. A message sent at the right hour. A bold move made when momentum is on your side. These moments are rare because most people are too distracted to recognize them. They're consumed by fear or comfort, noise or routine. They don't see the shift in someone's tone. They miss the signal of readiness in a new opportunity. They ignore the quiet tug that says, "Now, this is the moment." Strategic thinkers train their minds to listen for that whisper. Life is always communicating. Most people just haven't learned its language. A major enemy of good timing is impulsiveness. Impulse is the mind's attempt to escape discomfort. It feels urgent. It feels powerful. It feels right. And yet, most regrets are born from impulsive choices. You buy something to feel better. You lash out to release anger. You quit because you're tired. You commit because you're lonely. You say yes because you fear missing out. Impulsiveness is a reaction. Timing is a response. And the difference between those two is the difference between chaos and clarity. Strategic thinkers use the pause as their weapon. One breath, one moment of awareness, one question. Is this the right move? Or just the fast move? That one pause can alter the entire trajectory of your life. Of course, timing has an opposite danger, waiting too long. This is where overthinking, fear, and perfectionism team up to paralyze you. You hesitate even when everything inside you says go. You gather more information, more opinions, more reassurance, yet still don't move. You keep refining the plan instead of executing the first step. You hold on to a job, a relationship, a dream, a version of yourself. Long after life has shown you it's time to pivot. This is the other side of bad timing. The moment passes. The window closes. The opportunity dissolves into what if. Strategic timing lives in the middle, not rushing from fear, not freezing from doubt, but moving from clarity. To master timing, you must learn to trust patterns more than emotions. Emotions shout. Patterns whisper. Emotions change by the hour. Patterns remain consistent. Strategic thinkers track behavior, not mood. They watch cycles. They study timing in smaller ways so they can master it in bigger ones. When does your creativity peak? When does your energy dip? When do certain people shift in behavior? When does opportunity tend to appear in your industry or environment? When do problems repeat? Patterns reveal timing. Timing reveals strategy. Strategy reveals success. But perhaps the most powerful dimension of timing is alignment. Some things happen only when you are ready for them. Some doors open only when you have grown enough to walk through them. Some opportunities show up only when you've released what no longer serves you. Some relationships enter only when you've healed the parts of you that would sabotage them. Timing isn't just external, it's internal. You become aligned with success when your character, discipline, self-awareness, and courage catch up with your desires. That alignment creates a strange, beautiful phenomenon. life stops resisting you. You no longer force outcomes. You no longer chase validation. You no longer push the river. You move with the current, not because you're passive, but because you finally understand the flow. A simple but profound story captures the essence of timing. A bamboo seed is planted. For years, nothing happens. No sprout, no growth, no sign of progress. People walk by and say it's dead. It's worthless. It's a failure. But beneath the soil, the roots are weaving, strengthening, anchoring. Then one day, after years of stillness, the bamboo shoots upward not slowly, but explosively, growing meters in weeks. It wasn't growing overnight. It was preparing one. Sometimes your timing looks like delay, but it's actually foundation. Sometimes life makes you wait because it's preparing you for expansion. Timing isn't measured in minutes. It's measured in readiness. In the end, timing is not about luck. It's about awareness. You wait with intention. You move with precision. You strike with confidence. You align with the rhythm of your future. And when that happens, you stop fighting life. You begin dancing with it. There comes a moment in every strategic journey when you realize something profound. Success was never about working yourself into exhaustion. It was never about grinding through the night, hustling endlessly, or carrying the weight alone. Success, real, sustainable, expanding success, comes from leverage, from learning how to do more with less, from discovering the multipliers hidden inside your time, your skills, your relationships, and your resources. Leverage is the difference between those who struggle and those who scale, between people who burn out and people who break through, between effort that drains and effort that compounds. And today, you'll understand how leverage transforms your life from linear progress to exponential growth. If you want to understand leverage, imagine this. Two people are trying to move a massive boulder. One uses their bare hands. They sweat, strain, push, and scream. They barely make it budge. The other places a long wooden plank beneath it, presses lightly, and the rock lifts with ease. Same goal, same person, different strategy. That is, leverage a small input, producing a massive output. And once you understand it, you'll never approach life the same way again. Leverage begins with a shift in identity. Most people are trained to believe that effort equals worth. They think the harder they work, the more they deserve success. So they overwork, they overload, they overcommit. They believe struggle is noble and ease is suspicious. Strategic thinkers see it differently. They ask, why carry the entire load when I can engineer a smarter system? Why repeat what could be automated? Why do alone what could be delegated? Streamlined or scaled, leverage disrupts the old pattern of effort-based living. It reveals that the goal is not to do everything, but to do the right things in the right way, so that everything moves with you. Leverage isn't laziness. Leverage is intelligence. The first and most powerful form of leverage is time. Time is equal for everyone, yet the results we get from it vary wildly. Why? Because some people multiply time while others merely spend it. Someone who multitasks is not leveraging time. Someone who prioritizes deeply, eliminates ruthlessly, and focuses intensely, that person is. Leverage shows up when you stop scattering your energy and start channeling it. Time multiplies when you build habits that free your mind, when you create systems that reduce decision fatigue, When you concentrate on high-impact actions rather than busy work, most people are busy. Strategic thinkers are effective. That is leverage. Another powerful dimension of leverage lies in your skills. Most people treat their skills as tools. Strategic thinkers treat them as engines. A tool helps you do something. An engine moves you forward even when you're not thinking about it. When you master a skill, deeply communication, writing, leadership, selling, analysis, creativity, it forms a foundation that creates opportunities for years. A good communicator doesn't persuade once, they influence everywhere. A great leader doesn't lead one team, they elevate every environment they enter. A skilled creator doesn't produce one piece of work, they build a legacy. Skill leverage is skill that compounds. Every new hour invested pays you back for decades. Then there's relationship leverage, one of the most misunderstood forces of success. People think leverage means using others. It doesn't. True leverage means aligning with others. It means recognizing that every person holds knowledge, resources, access, or experience you don't have. And when you connect with the right people authentically, generously, intentionally, everything becomes easier. One conversation can save you 3 years of mistakes. One mentor can accelerate what you've been trying to figure out alone. One ally can open doors you didn't even know existed. Great strategists don't isolate. They don't pretend to have all the answers. They surround themselves with people whose strengths amplify their own. When you build relationships rooted in trust, respect, and mutual value, you're not adding effort, you're adding engines. That is leverage. Technology is another form of leverage that most people underestimate. The same phone that distracts millions can empower a strategist. The same AI tool that entertains the world can multiply your creativity, your time, your speed. The same platform that wastes attention for some can amplify your message, automate your systems, and free hours of your day. The question isn't whether technology is good or bad. The question is whether it serves you or consumes you. When you use technology as a force multiplier, it becomes leverage, a silent team working behind the scenes, amplifying everything you do. But the deepest form of leverage, the kind that changes the trajectory of your life, the kind that compounds for decades, is internal leverage. The leverage of your mindset, your self-awareness, your emotional discipline, your ability to think clearly under pressure, your ability to choose long-term over short-term, because when your inner world is steady, your outer world becomes strategic. When you learn to respond instead of react, you leverage your emotions. When you learn to detach from noise and see the bigger picture, you leverage your clarity. When you act from purpose instead of insecurity, you leverage your identity. Internal leverage is the foundation upon which every external advantage is built. You cannot leverage relationships if insecurity rules you. You cannot leverage time if distraction controls you. You cannot leverage skills if doubt paralyzes you. You cannot leverage opportunities if fear blinds you. Your mindset is the ultimate multiplier. With it, small actions grow into major breakthroughs. Without it, even massive effort leads to tiny results. Leverage is powerful, but it also requires courage. Courage to let go of the tasks you once believed defined your value. Courage to trust systems instead of heroics. Courage to ask for help, delegate, or collaborate. Courage to believe that ease is earned, not avoided. Ease doesn't mean weakness. Ease mas alignement. Ease means strategy. Leverage takes you from force to flow, from pushing uphill to moving with gravity on your side. And once you've experienced that shift, once you've seen how small actions can create massive outcomes, you'll never go back to the old way of living. Because leverage reveals a truth that changes everything. You don't win by doing more. You win by using more wisely. You win by multiplying your effort, not increasing it. By building systems, not stress. By creating engines, not burdens. By choosing actions that elevate the next 100 actions. Leverage makes your life compound. And when your life compounds, you stop surviving and start scaling. Life rarely moves in straight lines. Plans shift. Circumstances change. People evolve. The world surprises you in ways you never expected. And in those moments, the moments when the ground suddenly moves beneath your feet, most people freeze, panic, or break. But strategic thinkers don't break. They bend, not because they're weak, unsure, or passive, but because they understand something deeper. Rigidity is fragile. Flexibility is power. Agility is the ability to stay anchored in your long-term vision while shifting your short-term path with calmness and clarity. It's the skill of adjusting without losing direction, pivoting without losing purpose, changing form without losing strength. Agility is the art of surviving any storm by moving with it, not against it. Agility begins with a quiet truth. Change is not the enemy. Your resistance to it is. People fear change because it disrupts the familiar. It forces you into uncertainty. It challenges who you think you are and what you think you can handle. But the strategic mind knows something essential. Change is not an interruption. It's information. Every shift, every unexpected event, every sudden twist is data. It's life revealing something about the environment, the timing, the landscape, or even about you. The wise don't run from this information. They adjust. Just like bamboo, firm at the root, flexible at the stem, you can withstand enormous pressure the moment you allow yourself to bend. When life pushes, you don't break. You breathe, reset, and reposition. Agility also means releasing the illusion of control. Most people cling to their plans the same way they cling to their identity. This must work. This must go my way. This must unfold exactly how I imagined. And when reality disagrees, they crumble. But strategic thinkers understand that a plan is not a prophecy. It's a starting point. Plans are designed to guide you, not chain you, not suffocate you, not blind you to new opportunities or new realities. Agility means holding your plans lightly and holding your purpose tightly. The plan can evolve. The method can shift. The timeline can change. But the mission remains. You don't abandon your dream. You update the route. That one mindset shift separates those who collapse under pressure from those who rise through it. A huge part of agility is the ability to pivot smoothly, quietly, and without losing your center. Most people only pivot when forced. When something breaks, when a door closes, when the pain becomes too heavy to ignore. But strategic minds pivot early. They sense the shift before it screams. They move before the moment becomes urgent. To pivot well, you need to ask yourself, what is this situation telling me? What's the new path of least resistance? What option keeps me aligned while allowing me to move forward? A pivot isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign of intelligence. Birds do not fly in straight lines. Rivers do not flow in straight lines. And you, if you're living strategically, won't either. Life bends. So you bend. Life adjusts. So you adjust. Pivoting isn't abandoning the goal. It's finding the smarter, cleaner, calmer path to reach it. Agility also requires emotional flexibility. Because let's be honest, it's not the external changes that break you. It's the internal resistance. When something unexpected happens, your mind wants certainty. Your emotions want safety. Your ego wants control. That's why people panic. That's why they spiral. That's why they crash. The agile mind does something different. It creates space. Instead of reacting instantly, it pauses. It breathes. It observes the emotional storm without becoming it. This spaciousness allows you to remain steady while everything around you shifts. It gives you the clarity to ask, what matters most right now? What can I solve? What can I influence? What can I release? What is the wisest move? Not the loudest one. Emotional flexibility isn't weakness. It's mastery. When you can stay soft inside chaos, you stay conscious enough to move with precision. Agility also means being willing to reinvent yourself when needed. Sometimes life doesn't just ask you to change your approach. It asks you to change your identity. The way you think, the way you work, the way you respond, the way you show up in the world. Reinvention is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming a more aligned version of who you've always been. It's shedding old patterns that no longer serve you, old expectations that no longer fit you, old stories that no longer define you. Agility at its highest level is identity. Agility, the ability to evolve without fear, to upgrade without shame, to release without hesitation. This is how you grow without breaking. This is how you rise without resisting. This is how you win without forcing. Here's the deepest truth about agility. You don't become unbreakable by becoming hard. You become unbreakable by becoming adaptable. Think of water. Water can take any shape, fill any space, flow around any obstacle, carve through mountains with patience and persistence. But water never loses itself. It stays true to its essence, even when its form changes again and again. That is agility, fluidity with purpose, movement with intention, flexibility with strength. When you embody agility, you stop fighting the world and start collaborating with it. The storms still come, but you move with them. The obstacles still appear, but you shift around them. The unexpected still arrives, but you respond with calmness instead of collapse. Agility makes you unstoppable, not because life becomes easier, but because you become wiser, smoother, lighter, impossible to pin down, and impossible to break. Most people think influence is loud, that it's about convincing, persuading, arguing, performing. They imagine influence as force, the pressure to change someone's mind or direction. But that's the old, clumsy definition. Real influence, the kind that lasts, the kind people feel, the kind that moves hearts quietly and powerfully, has nothing to do with pressure, nothing to do with domination, nothing to do with manipulation. True influence is soft power, subtle power, presence-based power. It's the ability to understand people so deeply that you can guide them without pushing them. It's the skill of communicating in a way that feels natural, safe, aligned, and effortless. Strategic influence doesn't force people to move. It inspires them to move themselves. Influence begins with presence. You've felt this before. A person walks into a room and doesn't say a word, yet the entire atmosphere shifts, not because they're loud, but because they're grounded, attentive, emotionally steady, fully there. Presence is the silent language people trust the most. When someone feels your presence genuine, calm, focused, they open up. Because presence feels like safety, and people follow those who make them feel safe. Influence doesn't start with your words. It starts with your energy. From presence comes understanding, not the surface-level kind where you wait for your turn to speak, but the deeper kind, the kind where you see the human behind the behavior. When someone is angry, you sense the fear underneath. When someone is resistant, you see the insecurity behind the resistance. When someone withdraws, you notice the exhaustion behind the silence. People become easier to influence the moment you stop trying to change them and start trying to understand them. Influence is emotional awareness turned outward. It's reading the subtle cues: tone, hesitation, body language, pacing, micro-expressions, and adjusting your communication with precision. When you understand someone's internal world, your words naturally land where they're meant to. Influence also requires letting go of ego. Most communication problems come from the same root, the desire to be right. People argue to win, not to understand. They listen only to respond. They speak from insecurity instead of intention. But influence comes from humility, the willingness to meet someone where they are, instead of dragging them where you want them to be. Strategic thinkers remove themselves from the center of the conversation. They focus on the other person's experience, not their own performance. Because influence isn't about you, it's about them. The moment your ego steps out, your clarity steps in. And clarity is magnetic. Another dimension of influence is the ability to reshape emotional states gently, quietly, skillfully. Every person you interact with enters the conversation carrying energy: stress, excitement, fear, shame, confusion, pride, insecurity, hope, frustration. If you match their energy, you drown in it. If you resist their energy, you create conflict. But if you guide their energy, you create influence. You slow your voice when they're overwhelmed. You soften your tone when they're defensive. You bring warmth when they're guarded. You bring strength when they feel lost. Your emotional state becomes the stabilizer. They attune to you without even realizing it. This is how quiet people often become the most influential. Their centeredness becomes contagious. Influence also lives in the questions you ask. Not manipulative questions, not leading questions, but the kind that help people uncover their own truth. Because people rarely follow commands, but they always follow clarity, especially when it's clarity they discovered themselves. Questions that expand, questions that soften, questions that reveal blind spots, questions that disarm defensiveness. The right question at the right moment can shift someone's entire perspective more than a long explanation ever could. Influence is often less about telling and more about guiding someone toward their own realization. Here's a truth most people overlook. People don't resist you. They resist feeling controlled. The moment someone senses pressure, even subtle pressure, their defenses rise. But when they feel seen, respected, understood, included, their resistance dissolves. This is why strategic influence never feels like influence. It feels like partnership. It feels like alignment. It feels like two people walking together, not one dragging the other. When you stop pushing, people stop resisting. When you stop trying to win, people stop trying to protect themselves. Influence becomes effortless the moment you replace force with collaboration. There's also a storytelling aspect to influence, not storytelling as performance, but storytelling as emotional resonance. When you share a story, you bypass their defenses and speak directly to their humanity. Stories are mirrors. People don't just hear them, they see themselves inside them. Influence through story is influence through connection, a reminder that we're all navigating similar storms, carrying similar wounds, seeking similar peace. An aligned story can shift someone's heart faster than any argument ever could. At the highest level, influence becomes identity. Not something you do, but something you are. People trust you because your energy is consistent. They follow your guidance because your actions match your words. They feel safe with you because you communicate without harming, lead without dominating, redirect without shaming, and correct without belittling. You become the kind of person whose presence alone brings clarity, whose voice brings reassurance, whose honesty brings direction. Influence becomes a natural extension of your integrity. And that is the most powerful form of influence, of all influence, born not from performance, but from character. All the clarity in the world means nothing without execution. All the insights, frameworks, strategies, and mindsets remain potential beautiful, inspiring, but powerless until they are translated into consistent, deliberate action. Execution is where transformation stops being an idea and becomes evidence, proof, momentum, reality. It is the moment when your future steps out of imagination and begins walking toward you in the physical world. But most people never reach this stage, not because they're lazy, but because they're overwhelmed. They plan endlessly. They gather insight after insight. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect motivation, the perfect conditions. And in that waiting, life quietly slips by. Strategic thinkers understand something deeper. Perfect doesn't exist. Progress does. And execution is the art of turning imperfect steps into unstoppable momentum. Execution begins with grounding. It's the ability to take a vision that feels grand, expansive, almost intimidating, and bring it down to earth without lowering its power. You take what feels big and break it into movements you can touch, feel, live, and repeat. Execution isn't about dramatic gestures. It's about everyday alignment. A small decision repeated consistently is more powerful than a massive decision repeated once. One page a day becomes a book. One conversation a day becomes a network. 1 hour of focused work becomes a skill. One act of courage becomes a new identity. People overestimate intensity and underestimate consistency. Strategic execution is consistency in motion. But to execute well, you must also build systems, not rigid systems that trap you, but supportive systems that carry you when motivation fades. Because motivation is emotional, discipline is structural. If you rely on your willpower alone, you'll win some days and lose others. But when you create systems, routines, environments, habits, constraints, accountability, you shift from effort-based progress to environment-based progress. Your system becomes the silent engine moving you forward. Execution becomes easier because the structure holds you even when your energy doesn't. This is how high performers stay consistent without burning out. They don't wake up every day and battle themselves. They build systems that remove friction, reduce noise, and amplify focus. They make the path of progress the path of least resistance. Another core of execution is respect for momentum. Momentum is fragile at first, a tiny spark, a subtle shift, a quiet rhythm. Most people ignore it because it seems small, but momentum, once nurtured, becomes a force of its own. It begins to carry you, support you, and accelerate you. Momentum is the moment when the work stops feeling heavy and begins feeling natural. When effort turns into flow, when discipline turns into identity, when actions stop being something you force and become something you are. Strategic thinkers protect momentum the way others protect money or time. Because when you lose momentum, you don't just lose progress, you lose energy, you lose clarity, you lose belief. The momentum you build today becomes the confidence you carry tomorrow. Execution also demands emotional neutrality. Most people sabotage their own consistency because they attach too many emotions to the outcome. They ask, do I feel like doing this today? Does it feel easy today? Do I feel inspired right now? Strategic thinkers operate differently. They don't execute based on emotion. They execute based on identity. They understand that feelings fluctuate, but commitment anchors. You don't brush your teeth only when motivated. You don't show up to work only when energized. You don't eat only when inspired. You do these things because they're part of your life system. Execution becomes effortless when you stop negotiating with yourself. When action is no longer optional. When you do what needs to be done, not because you feel like it, but because it's who you're choosing to become. The final layer of execution is adaptation. Because even the best strategies evolve, even the strongest systems need adjustment. Even the most consistent routines eventually require refinement. Execution isn't rigidity. Execution is responsive discipline. You do the work. You measure the feedback. You adjust the path. Every action provides information. What works? What doesn't? What needs more time? What needs less effort? What aligns? What drains? Execution turns life into a loop of action, reflection, and improvement. It becomes a dance between commitment and flexibility, discipline and intuition, structure and evolution. This is how strategies become realities, not through perfection, but through iteration. And here's the quiet truth strategic thinkers live by. The gap between who you are and who you want to be is closed by what you do daily. Not weekly, not occasionally, not when inspiration strikes. Daily, because daily action compounds. Daily action creates identity. Daily action builds mastery. Daily action turns dreams into inevitabilities. Execution is not glamorous. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. Execution is devotion. Quiet. Steady devotion. It's the willingness to show up again and again, especially on the days when no one is watching, no one is applauding, and no immediate reward exists. That is the difference between those who hope and those who achieve, between those who imagine and those who realize, between those who almost get there and those who build a life aligned with their deepest vision. If you've made it to this moment, it means something powerful. You're not just listening, you're transforming. You're shifting from living on autopilot to living with intention. You're stepping into the identity of someone who thinks strategically, communicates wisely, and moves through life with clarity, calmness, and purpose. What you just learned isn't theory. It's a new operating system, a way of seeing the world that puts you in the driver's seat, a way of thinking that protects your energy amplifies your influence, and elevates the way you show up for yourself and for others. The truth is, most people drift through life reacting, rushing, and repeating old patterns. But you right now, you're choosing awareness. You're choosing elevation. You're choosing strategy over survival, intention over impulse, and presence over noise. And this is only the beginning, because the moment you shift the way you think, your entire life begins to shift with you. If this journey resonated with you, if it brought clarity, peace, or a sense of direction, then I invite you to stay connected with us. On this channel, every video is crafted to help you rise higher, think deeper, and live life with more wisdom and emotional mastery. If you want more long-form audio like this, more calm guidance, more strategic insight, more tools to build a life you're proud to wake up, to make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of your evolution. And remember, transformation doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens in the quiet, consistent decision to think better, choose better, and be better. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take a deep breath. Feel your mind clear, your body soften, your vision sharpen. Carry this clarity into the rest of your life, and I'll meet you in the next video.